Hello folks, it's been 2 years since our last video, but we're going to pick up where we left off. And that was making a 2-axis skull using a gimbal. Today we're going to convert that into a 3-axis skull. 2 years ago we made a new method for creating a 2-axis talking skull from a gimbal. The purpose was to make a simpler but more durable talking skull. This is the old method. All of the servos are on a plate inside of the skull, leaving little room for accessories. This is the skull on a gimbal. We are going to add the tilt axis inside of the skull. This is the whole mechanism removed from the skull, and it is surprisingly easy to make. The only skull modification will be cutting a small hole in the skull base using a Dremel tool. To make the tilt axis, we start with a 3/4 inch piece of aluminum stock from Home Depot. Do not buy the cheap Amazon stuff, it will not bend properly. First measure approximately 8.5 inches on the aluminum stock and mark it with a pen, pencil, or a marker. Next, clamp the aluminum stock down and use a Dremel, an angle grinder, or a hacksaw to put a slight groove in the aluminum stock along the mark. Then take the aluminum stock, place it in a vise with the groove less than 1 inch from the vise. Bend until it breaks. Then make a second mark about 2 3/4 inches from the bottom. Place the aluminum stock back in the vise with the mark even with the jaw on the vise. Then bend it to a 90-degree angle. Then you will need to make marks for holes that will be drilled at 3, 4, and 5 inches from the 90-degree angle on the long side of the mount. On the sharp part of the L frame, measure about 1.5 inches from the bend and mark a place for the mounting holes to be drilled using about a 5/16 inch drill bit. Place the bracket in the vise and drill the hole using a drill press or a drill. Make sure that you secure it firmly. I would recommend using a small bit first, then a medium bit, and then the 5/16 bit, and drill slowly. You may want to use WD-40 to keep the drill bit from biting. The holes at the 3, 4, and 5 inch marks on the long side of the L frame are for the tilt bracket and the pop rivets used to hold the servo bracket. The hole at the 3 inch mark, the one closest to the 90-degree bend, is for a number 8 32 screw, lock washer, and lock nut. Use a 3/16 inch bit to make this hole. Next, shift the vise down and drill the holes for the pop rivets using the correct size drill bit for the rivets that you use. They are usually sold in a kit along with the rivet gun. You will need to drill holes in the servo bracket to line up with your rivet holes. You can make your own servo bracket, or you can buy them for about $8 online. If you're going to do a lot of these, they are cheap and easy to make. To make your servo bracket, line up your servo about 1/2 inch from the end of a piece of 1/16 inch L-shaped aluminum stock from Home Depot. Using your servo as a guide, mark off both bottom edges. Use a Dremel with a metal cutting blade or a hacksaw to cut the 2 sides. Then use the Dremel to score the center area. Then use a pair of pliers or channel locks to bend and remove the unwanted center section. Now cut off the other edge of the bracket. Set the servo into the bracket and mark the mounting holes. Depending on your servo screws, use a 1/16 inch bit or a 3/32 inch bit to drill out the mounting holes. Once the servo mount holes are drilled, use your rivet gun and your pot rivet to attach the servo mount to the L-shaped bracket. Next, you'll need to cut out an area about 1 inch by 2 3/4 inches around the hole in the bottom of your skull. You can use a small saw, but I used a Dremel tool to do this. Next, we're going to make the tilt bracket. And to do this, we're going to take a 4-foot length of L-shaped stock, 3/4 by 3/4 that we got from Home Depot. We're going to cut out approximately a 4-inch piece from this section of L stock. Then we'll check to see that it fits on the inside of our skull. Next, we'll drill the mounting hole for the tilt bracket using a 3/16 inch bit. Then we'll drill out our 2 mounting holes on the flip side of the L stock. Finally, we drill out 2 small 1/16 inch holes on the side for the arms for our servos. And this is our finished product. Then we attach the L tilt bracket to the 90-degree servo bracket with the 832 bolt and the lock washer and a nylon nut, leaving just enough room for us to be able to move the tilt bracket. For the mouth servo, you just make a bracket as shown earlier, just using a smaller servo like the HS65MG. Mounting is easy. Just screw the mounting plate to the side of the skull above the jaw. You might want to add a little bit of JB Weld just as an added precaution. With the tilt bracket complete, you now slip the lower portion of the L frame through the 1 inch by 1 3/4 inch hole you previously drilled in the base of the skull. Mount the mechanism to the skull by using 2 lathe or 2 drywall screws. Both of them bite really well. Once the tilt mechanism is mounted to the skull, mount the skull tilt combo to the gimbal. And your 3-axis skull is complete. The complete mechanism without the skull will look like this. A note of importance here. The 425 BB originally used for the rotate servo had a lot of chatter and was too underpowered for the mechanism, so I switched it to a higher powered 625 MG servo. I then used the 425 BB for the nod. Unfortunately, it was also underpowered, so I had to add 2 springs to the back to give it some stability. The end result is a pretty efficient skull with few working parts and little chatter. Please note, a lot of the tools used here can be very dangerous. Do not attempt this unless you're very well experienced with all of these tools. If you are underage, please make sure you have adult supervision before you try this.